creativity is part of God's DNA in us. It's part of our identity. And this is a big thing. I've been banging my head off this wall for decades, that the church needs to realize this, and the church needs to embrace creativity. The church needs to use it more in its worship. It did that way back. We've neglected it now. We've ostracized creativity out of our worship.
So let's go there. Since you've started this, I want to talk about the church and art, the gospel and art. What are we missing, and what are the implications of what we're missing?
Well, I mean, if you go and visit any European city, even any older British city, and you go to a cathedral and you walk in, you're impacted by what the church believed would bring a sense of wonder, awe, and a sense of worship to the person who interacts with the church. And that's even before anybody opens their mouth, or before a note is played. In our contemporary culture of church, the one creative gift that's used is music. And that's basically it. I'm not sure, it might be different in your church, the last time you had a poet speaking at the front of the church, or you had someone play a beautiful piece of Bach, or, someone, shared this story about a painting, that's impacted their life. I think you have to be cautious about some of these things, but I think that those things, if introduced in the right way, would help enrich a service, especially in our culture where focus is becoming, more limited in terms of time. That we need to engage in other ways within a church service, and that we have sort of almost sucked the wonder out of church and worship, by, I don't mean in disrespect by this, but by sometimes majoring in the mundane. And I know certainly sometimes the things you have to sit through in church to get to where the richness is a bit like going through a swamp to get to this beautiful place. So I do think we've neglected it, and even how we interpret ourselves outside our churches. Because there's lots of people who are going to pass our church buildings who will not come inside. So how do we get their attention? How do we trigger a thought about redemption, about sin, about love? How do we do that? How does the world do those sort of things? It does it by putting billboards and signage up and catching people's attention in traffic. And so I've been pushing this idea about how we visualize ourselves outside of church, how we can engage with people who may not come in, that may make them think, that may trigger some thoughts, that may actually make them think, I'm going to go to a service or someday and find out what that's all about. So we have sort of pulled back from all that richness of the visual, from all that richness of literature. And certainly we've sort of majored in a generic sense in one particular style of music. And I think that personally, that needs to be looked at.
Yeah, I gave you this morning a poetry book, and it was a conscious decision by the publisher to call it a book of meditations, because if they called it a book of poetry, no one would pick it up. That's where we are.
Yeah. It's good marketing.
Yeah. And it's sad marketing, though.
Yeah, it is. It's all part of the alphabet of grace. All these things are part of the alphabet of grace, and we've left letters out of our alphabet. So we become more inarticulate because of the loss of those words, those letters. And meditation is a really important thing. It's like a code word for almost like prayer. And pilgrimage as well is another thing that we neglect in terms of striving towards something or going towards something, and growing as a Christian. So we need to engage with culture in a bigger and deeper way. And we have been it's like reversing up a one-way street. It's not been a good experience.